Before Zeus ruled, the cosmos was ruled by fear of succession. Cronus, lord of the Titans, had seized power by overthrowing his own father, Uranus. Yet victory did not bring peace. Cronus lived in constant terror of prophecy, that one of his children would one day dethrone him, just as he had done before. Power, once taken by violence, could only be guarded by it. To prevent this fate, Cronus devoured each of his children at birth. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon vanished into darkness before they could see the world. Their mother, Rhea, watched creation repeat itself in silence. The Titan Age appeared eternal, but beneath its surface, inevitability was growing. The universe itself seemed to resist stagnation. Order without renewal became suffocating. The sky waited for a ruler who would not merely dominate, but stabilize. The fall of Cronus was not an accident waiting to happen. It was a necessity written into the structure of existence. When Zeus was conceived, Rhea refused to surrender another child. She deceived Cronus by giving him a stone wrapped in swaddling clothes, which he swallowed without question. Zeus was hidden away on the island of Crete, far from the eyes of Titans and Fate alike. There, nurtured by nymphs and guarded by the Curetes, Zeus grew in secrecy. The clash of shields drowned out his cries, masking his presence from the devouring father. Unlike his siblings, Zeus experienced childhood, not innocence, but preparation. From an early age, Zeus exhibited not only strength but perception. He understood hierarchy, consequence, and restraint. He did not merely desire power, he sensed responsibility. His growth mirrored the slow gathering of a storm, unseen but inevitable. When Zeus reached maturity, he did not strike blindly. He freed his swallowed siblings, forcing Cronus to release what he had consumed. Thus began the Titanomachy, a war that shook the foundations of the cosmos. Zeus allied with the Cyclopes and the Hecatoncheires, ancient beings imprisoned by the Titans themselves. From the Cyclopes, Zeus received thunder and lightning, weapons not of brute force, but of command over the sky. The war lasted 10 years. Mountains shattered, seas boiled, and the heavens trembled. Zeus did not merely overpower the Titans, he outlasted them. When victory came, it was decisive. The Titans were cast into Tartarus, and the old world ended. After the war, the universe demanded structure. Zeus did not seize everything for himself. Instead, the three brothers cast lots. Zeus received the sky, Poseidon the sea, and Hades the underworld. Earth remained shared. This division was not weakness, it was wisdom. Zeus understood that absolute control breeds rebellion. By distributing power, he preserved balance. As ruler of the sky, Zeus became the axis around which order revolved. Storms, rain, and seasons fell under his authority. His throne was not merely high, it was central. Zeus ruled not as a distant tyrant, but as an active force. He enforced oaths, protected hospitality, and punished hubris. Justice, under Zeus, was not moral perfection. It was cosmic equilibrium. His thunderbolts were symbols of authority, not rage. When Zeus struck, it was to restore proportion, not to indulge wrath. Yet his mercy was limited. He demanded respect for order above all. Among mortals, Zeus was both feared and revered. Kings invoked his name to legitimize rule. Cities swore oaths beneath his sky. He became the unseen witness to human ambition. Zeus was not without flaw. His many unions produced gods and heroes, but also chaos and resentment. Desire was both his weakness and his creative force. Through his children came Athena, Apollo, Artemis, Hermes, and Dionysus, embodiments of wisdom, light, transition, and transformation. Zeus did not micromanage their domains, He allowed diversity of power. This contradiction defined him. Zeus was order, yet not rigidity. He allowed conflict among gods, believing tension preserved vitality. His rule was not sterile, it was dynamite. Zeus's authority was tested repeatedly. Giants rose against Olympus. Typhon challenged the sky itself. Even gods plotted rebellion. Each time, Zeus endured. Sometimes through force, sometimes through alliances. He adapted rather than collapsed. His strength was not invulnerability, but resilience. These trials reinforced his role. Zeus was not eternal because he was flawless, but because he could survive disorder without becoming it. Zeus was worshipped as father, judge, and protector. His temples crowned mountains. His symbols, the eagle, the oak, the thunderbolt, represented sovereignty. To the Greeks, Zeus was not merely a god. He was the guarantee that the world would not unravel. Even chaos existed within limits set by his sky. Zeus remains the archetype of rulership, not the absence of conflict, but the force that prevents collapse. As long as humanity seeks order that allows life to continue, Zeus endures. Hera was born in an age when the cosmos was still unstable, shaped by fear, ambition, and inherited violence. As the daughter of Cronus and Rhea, she entered existence under the shadow of tyranny and inevitable conflict. Like her siblings, she was swallowed by her father, erased into darkness before her identity could fully form. From the beginning, Hera learned that power is rarely gentle, and survival often precedes justice. When Zeus overthrew Cronus and freed his siblings, Hera emerged not as a liberated child, but as a being already shaped by loss. The absence of warmth and safety hardened her sense of order and loyalty. She understood early that stability must be defended, not expected. From captivity, Hera carried a lasting awareness of betrayal and control. Unlike many gods, Hera did not define herself through conquest or chaos. She sought continuity, legitimacy, and structure in a world prone to rupture. Her power grew not through spectacle, but through endurance and authority. Order, once broken, became her central obsession. When Hera became the wife of Zeus, the union was not one of romance, but of cosmic necessity. Their marriage symbolized the stabilization of divine rule after generations of violence. As Queen of Olympus, Hera embodied sovereignty, law, and rightful authority. Through her, kingship gained legitimacy beyond raw power. Yet Zeus was not a god of restraint, and his infidelities tested the limits of Hera's patience. Betrayal became a recurring wound, reopening her memories of abandonment and loss of control. Hera's wrath did not arise from jealousy alone, but from violated order. Each transgression threatened the stability she represented. Hera rarely punished Zeus directly, for his power made confrontation futile. Instead, her anger fell upon those who disrupted the sanctity of marriage and lineage. Mortals and demigods became vessels for consequence. Through punishment, Hera enforced boundaries that Zeus refused to respect. To mortals, Hera appeared cruel and relentless, yet her actions followed a strict internal logic. She defended legitimacy, inheritance, and lawful union. Children born of betrayal symbolized chaos entering order. Hera's wrath was not random but judicial. Her persecution of Heracles stands as the most infamous example of her resolve. From birth, she opposed him as living proof of broken vows. Each trial he endured reflected her insistence that illegitimacy must suffer. Through conflict, Hera reinforced the cost of divine transgression. Despite her severity, Hera was not a goddess of destruction. She protected marriage, childbirth, and the continuity of families. Women prayed to her for lawful union and safe birth. Her presence governed the fragile space where society renews itself. As goddess of marriage, Hera did not represent affection or passion. She embodied commitment, endurance, and obligation. Love could fade, but vows must remain. Through Hera, marriage became a binding force rather than a fleeting emotion. Hera's authority extended beyond Olympus into every ordered society. Kings ruled under her gaze, and queens mirrored her power. She reinforced hierarchy not to oppress, but to preserve stability. Chaos, once unleashed, was difficult to contain. Her relationship with Zeus was a constant struggle between legitimacy and impulse. He ruled through strength and desire, while she ruled through law and memory. Their conflict defined Olympus as much as their union. Order survived not through harmony, but through tension. Hera's pride was not vanity, but recognition of her role. Without her, divine rule would collapse into unchecked desire. She endured humiliation to preserve structure. Her suffering became a form of governance. Though often feared, Hera was deeply respected. She demanded loyalty, patience, and discipline. Those who honored vows found protection under her power. Those who broke them faced consequence. In myth, Hera rarely acts impulsively. Her plans unfold slowly, deliberately, and with purpose. Time itself becomes her ally. Endurance, not force, defines her strength. Hera represents the cost of order in an imperfect world. Stability requires sacrifice, restraint, and sometimes cruelty. She embodies the burden of maintaining structure among gods who resist limitation. Through her, authority gains weight. To women, Hera was both protector and warning. She offered dignity through lawful union, but demanded endurance in return. Her favor brought status, but also expectation. Freedom was secondary to continuity. Unlike Aphrodite, Hera did not ignite desire. She contained it. Where passion disrupts, Hera stabilizes. Their opposition reflects two necessary cosmic forces. One moves, the other binds. Her temples emphasized ritual, order, and legitimacy. Marriage ceremonies invoked her authority. Queens prayed for wisdom and endurance. Hera's worship reinforced societal structure. Hera was not gentle, but she was consistent. Her justice followed principle rather than emotion. Even her wrath obeyed rules. In a chaotic cosmos, predictability became her gift. Over time, Hera's image softened in mortal understanding. She became a symbol of dignity, perseverance, and sovereignty. Her endurance inspired respect rather than fear. Strength, through her, gained moral gravity. Hera does not promise happiness or passion. She promises continuity. Through her, societies survive beyond individuals. Order becomes sacred. She embodies authority shaped by memory, loyalty, and pain. Her power grows from what she has endured. Through restraint, she governs gods and mortals alike. Stability becomes her legacy. As long as vows exist and order must be defended, Hera endures. She is not love, nor desire, nor mercy. She is legitimacy given form. Through her, the world remains bound rather than broken. Aphrodite emerged not from calm or blessing, but from rupture woven into the very structure of the cosmos when Uranus was overthrown and his essence plunged into the restless sea. Blood, divine power, and salt churned together in the waves, creating a force fully conscious and radiant from the very instant of birth. She did not bring harmony or mercy, but revealed that beauty and attraction could emerge from chaos, violence, and cosmic upheaval. From the first heartbeat of existence, she altered the world around her, making desire an unavoidable presence in all things, mortal and divine alike. As Aphrodite stepped upon the foaming shore, the sea calmed and the earth itself seemed to bloom beneath her feet in recognition of her power. The wind softened, clouds parted, and the light shifted as though bowing to an authority older than order itself. She bore no crown, carried no weapon, and demanded no obedience, yet every natural element moved instinctively around her presence. Beauty did not enter the world through her hands. It awakened as a living energy, shaping thought, longing, and destiny across the lands she touched. Aphrodite existed beyond all hierarchies, unbound by sky, earth, or underworld, occupying a realm between will and impulse, between restraint and surrender. Her presence challenged the very notion of control, exposing the fragility of divine order and the vulnerability of mortals. Desire, she demonstrated, is neither moral nor safe, yet it is a primal force that cannot be ignored. It reshapes lives, kingdoms, and even the structures of immortality, weaving threads of longing into the fabric of existence itself. Upon reaching Olympus, imbalance preceded understanding. as if the gods themselves had anticipated her arrival and could not contain it. She did not openly challenge Zeus, Hera, or Athena, yet certainty faltered and reason wavered wherever she stood. Rivalries sharpened, alliances strained, and judgment blurred under her subtle influence, leaving even immortals vulnerable. Desire manifested not as rebellion, but as revelation, exposing hidden longing and vulnerabilities that no god could suppress or deny. Zeus immediately perceived that Aphrodite was beyond command, a force that no crown, law, or decree could control. To contain rather than confront her, he arranged her marriage to Hephaestus, god of craft, fire, and order, seeking to anchor her chaos within structure. The union was outwardly accepted, yet Aphrodite's essence remained untouched, radiating influence across Olympus. She demonstrated that attraction and desire cannot be subdued by duty or decree, moving freely through every corner of the cosmos. Mortals experienced her presence more intensely than immortals, for they existed under the sharp pressure of time, consequence, and mortality. Love under her influence became total, consuming thought, identity, and will until nothing else retained equal weight. She taught that intensity, not duration, defines the value of emotion, compressing eternity into the brief lives of humanity. In every fleeting passion, mortals discovered both ecstasy and peril, a vivid reminder of the power that she commands. The union of Aphrodite and Ares was inevitability embodied, as love and war share a common origin in overwhelming desire. Possession and aggression intertwined, magnifying every impulse and revealing the underlying power of passion. Olympus could not deny the magnitude of the forces they unleashed, for even gods trembled in recognition. Their connection demonstrated that longing and conflict are inseparable, and that desire is capable of shaping the fates of both mortals and immortals. As a mother, Aphrodite did not shield her children from consequence, offering them neither comfort nor safety. Eros struck suddenly and unpredictably, dismantling logic, order, and restraint, while Harmonia emerged only after struggle and turbulence. Her lineage ensured that desire became structural, universal, and impossible to ignore, woven into the very framework of existence. Love, under her guidance, ceased to be personal and became a force that could alter the world itself. The worship of Aphrodite was immediate, tangible, and expressive, demanding engagement with the senses and the body. Beauty, touch, scent, and rhythm became sacred offerings, aligning mortals with her power and presence. Her temples were arenas of acknowledgement rather than fear, spaces where desire was recognized and legitimized. Through these rituals, longing was transformed into a visible, potent force shaping culture, identity, and devotion alike. For women especially, Aphrodite embodied agency and self-determination, turning desire into a form of power rather than weakness. Her influence allowed the body to reclaim authority, challenging societal suppression and moral restriction. Love became expression, visibility, and identity, unbound by external judgment or shame. Through her guidance, personal longing became a source of strength, dignity, and empowerment. Aphrodite is not simply a goddess of gentle romance, but the fundamental force of attraction itself, operating beneath reason and beyond law. She does not promise comfort, happiness, or stability, but guarantees movement, change, and intensity wherever she manifests. Her presence disrupts the ordinary, compelling gods and mortals alike to confront the uncontainable power of longing. Life without her would be rigid, logical, and devoid of the vibrant energy that desire introduces. She embodies risk, vulnerability, and transformation, shaping events with subtle yet undeniable influence. Mortals and gods alike discover identity and purpose through the passions she awakens. Desire acts as a mirror, reflecting hidden truths and challenging illusions. Every encounter with her influence is intensified, as attraction reshapes perception, choice, and destiny in profound ways. Aphrodite's birth challenged the cosmos to recognize beauty born from chaos and violence. Even the gods, accustomed to power and control, trembled at her sudden authority. Her presence forced all beings to confront desire within themselves. Order itself could not remain unaltered in the face of her radiant influence. The waves and winds moved instinctively around her, acknowledging a force older than structure or law. Every natural element bent to her subtle gravity, flowing without command, but with inevitability. She carried no weapon or title, yet imposed authority through presence alone. The world learned that attraction moves before reason, shaping thought, longing, and destiny. Her influence stripped away hidden excuses, revealing longing in every heart and every mind. Even immortals were confronted with desires they had long denied. She did not manipulate, she exposed truth, leaving no illusions intact. Awareness replaced pretense wherever her influence touched. The Trojan War exemplified her power, showing that desire can outweigh loyalty, law, and reason. A single promise of love unraveled alliances and inspired betrayal. Consequence followed wherever longing demanded action. Desire alone proved sufficient to change history and reshape mortal lives. Mortals thrived and suffered under her influence, as ecstasy and danger arrived together. Courage appeared alongside vulnerability, and triumph intertwined with loss. Love demanded total surrender and left no halfway path. Every choice bore the weight of intensity she imposed. Her children embodied consequence rather than protection or safety, inheriting her uncompromising essence. Eros struck without warning, dismantling logic and restraint, while Harmonia emerged only after trials. Her lineage ensured that longing and attraction became embedded in the world itself. Love became structural, universal, and inescapable under her hand. Her temples celebrated presence, embodiment, and engagement with the senses. Touch, beauty, fragrance, and rhythm became offerings aligned with her divine influence. Desire was legitimized rather than forbidden, honored as a force shaping culture and identity. Worship transformed longing into a powerful, visible, sacred expression. Women in particular found agency and authority through Aphrodite's influence. Desire became strength, reclaiming power over body, choice, and self-expression. Love transformed into visibility, action, and identity, unbound by judgment. Through her, passion became legitimate and empowering. Aphrodite does not promise happiness, safety, or stability. She guarantees movement, disruption, and transformation wherever she manifests. Her presence challenges the ordinary and forces confrontation with desire. Life without her would be static, predictable, and lifeless. She embodies risk, transformation, and revelation, reshaping lives with subtle yet irresistible influence. Mortals and gods confront their true nature under her presence. Desire acts as both mirror and guide, revealing hidden truths and shaping destiny. Attraction, under her, drives understanding, choice, and identity. Through her, passion and conflict are inseparable, for longing intensifies violence and choice alike. Love magnifies strength and vulnerability simultaneously. Desire transforms reality without apology or compromise. Mortals and immortals alike are bound to her influence. As long as beauty disrupts reason and longing defies control, Aphrodite endures as an eternal force. She is neither comfort nor salvation, but an unavoidable truth of existence. Her presence sustains life, love, creation, and the pulse of desire. Through her, attraction remains a constant, irreducible element shaping gods, mortals, and destiny alike. Demeter was born into a universe where existence itself was fragile and constantly threatened by annihilation. As the daughter of Cronus and Rhea, she inherited a cosmos shaped by fear, consumption, and the violent suppression of potential. Like her siblings, she was swallowed by her father, reduced to silence before her essence could unfold. This early erasure engraved into her being the knowledge that life survives only through persistence. When Zeus shattered Cronus' dominion and released the Olympians, Demeter returned not as a conqueror but as a witness. The memory of confinement lingered within her, shaping restraint rather than ambition. She did not compete for supremacy among gods of thunder or flame. Her gaze turned downward, toward the fragile surface where life struggled to endure. Demeter claimed dominion over the living earth, not as territory, but as process. Soil, grain, roots, and seasons fell under her influence. Her authority did not manifest through command, but through inevitability. Growth obeyed her without resistance. Unlike gods who ruled through fear, thunder, or visible domination, Demeter ruled through dependence woven into daily existence. Mortals did not pray to her for victory or protection in war, but for the continuation of life itself. Every field tilled, every seed buried, and every harvest awaited depended on her unseen approval. Her power manifested not through spectacle, but through the quiet certainty that survival could be granted or withdrawn. Demeter's divine identity deepened profoundly through motherhood, a bond that reshaped her purpose. Persephone represented more than a daughter. She embodied renewal, innocence, and the uninterrupted future of the living world. In Persephone, Demeter saw life unscarred by cosmic cruelty. Protection of this fragile continuity became her sacred duty. The moment Persephone was taken into the underworld, Demeter's internal order fractured completely. This loss was not an abstract injustice, but an intimate wound that severed her connection to rhythm and balance. Grief overwhelmed function, replacing growth with emptiness. The earth itself responded to her sorrow. Demeter did not strike out in immediate anger, nor did she pursue vengeance with fire or weapon. She withdrew her life-giving essence from the earth, letting absence itself communicate the weight of her sorrow. Rivers slowed, trees withered, and fields turned to dust as if the world itself mirrored her internal collapse. Every living creature felt her withdrawal, from the smallest sprout to the mightiest beast, and famine became a tangible expression of her grief. The silence she imposed was not empty, but densely charged with consequence. Without her blessing, seeds could not germinate, livestock faltered, and mortals starved under skies that would no longer yield bounty. Even the most powerful gods watched helplessly, for her grief had become a force as unavoidable as gravity. Her absence reshaped not only the land, but the order of the cosmos, demonstrating that the sustenance of life depended entirely on her will. Demeter wandered among mortals, concealed in plain sight, observing the suffering her absence had wrought. She saw children cry for bread, farmers collapse in despair, and villages slowly empty as hunger spread. Their anguish did not comfort her, but deepened the enormity of her sorrow. Compassion became a mirror reflecting her own pain, a relentless reminder that even the divine could suffer through empathy. Zeus, recognizing the danger of total deprivation, intervened not out of mercy but necessity. A world without harvest threatened to destabilize both mortal civilization and divine order. The balance of Olympus itself teetered under the weight of Demeter's grief. Sorrow had become a force beyond negotiation, capable of reshaping the cosmos itself. The compromise that followed forged new rules for existence. Persephone would spend part of the year with Hades in the underworld and the rest upon the living earth. Life would blossom, fade, and return with measured precision. Loss was transformed into a cycle, and grief became a rhythm embedded in time. From this division, the seasons themselves took shape. Spring and summer became moments of reunion and abundance, when joy and growth returned with force. Autumn and winter reflected absence, restraint, and the quiet pain of parting. Demeter's sorrow was transmuted into a cosmic cadence, where every living thing participated in her grief and her mercy. Yet memory of loss never faded from her consciousness. Each winter carried a shadow, reminding the world of absence even in the presence of future growth. Fertility returned under her watchful eye, but always tinged with the awareness of impermanence. Every seed that sprouted and every fruit that ripened bore the weight of remembrance. Demeter punished not through sudden wrath or destruction, but through deliberate withholding. She withdrew sustenance from lands, livestock, and mortals who disrespected the natural order. Her authority was subtle yet absolute, teaching through deprivation rather than chaos. Absence became her weapon, silence her instrument of power, and famine her message to the world. To mortals, She appeared as both nurturer and stern guardian. Those who honored the earth and its cycles received abundance in return. Those who ignored or defiled it faced hunger, scarcity, and suffering. Balance demanded reverence, and her justice was patient, inexorable, and impartial. The Eleusinian mysteries embodied her philosophy of life, death, and renewal. Initiates learned that descent and suffering precede growth and rebirth. Death was not opposition to life, but its prerequisite. These sacred teachings transformed human understanding, revealing the connection between mortality and divine order. Demeter taught that nourishment itself is sacred, not merely a material necessity. Eating became an act of communion, a recognition of cosmic order. Agriculture became ritualized. Each seed planted a prayer, each harvest a celebration. Through these acts, mortals participated in the cycles that defined both life and divinity. Unlike Aphrodite, she did not wield desire, and unlike Hera, she did not govern law or command. Her authority was steady, invisible, yet omnipresent, flowing through the land, soil, and seasons. Constancy and patience were her tools, endurance her hallmark. Where others disrupted, she sustained. Women, in particular, found in Demeter a mirror of their own resilience. Birth, labor, and care reflected her essence. Effort was sacred, persistence divine. In every act of nurturing, humans participated in her power. Her rule was not coercive, it was indispensable. No life could escape her influence, and even the gods could not act without regard to her domain. Existence bowed to her patience, and every living being relied on her grace. Silence and constancy were her instruments of governance. Through agriculture, she transformed humanity itself, turning wandering nomads into settled societies. Chaos yielded to structure, uncertainty to predictability. Villages grew into cities, sustenance into surplus. Civilization was built upon the rhythm of her generosity and the patience of her care. Demeter never promised abundance without effort, nor growth without respect for cycles. Patience, timing, and attention to natural law governed her favor. To force the earth was to defy her. To ignore rhythm was to court famine. Life itself was bound to her principles. She embodies the eternal truth that nothing living is permanent. Flourishing and decay exist inseparably, intertwined like root and branch, soil and seed. Love contains loss, joy mirrors sorrow, and vitality carries the shadow of mortality. Continuity survives only through acceptance of impermanence. As long as seeds fall into darkness and rise again, Demeter endures. She is not passion, conquest, nor fleeting emotion. She is sustenance made divine, the invisible hand that sustains all life. Through her, the cycle of growth, decay, and renewal continues without end, and the world survives despite grief and absence. Hestia was the first child born to Cronus and Rhea, emerging at a moment when the cosmos itself had not yet learned stability. Existence had form, but not continuity, and being did not yet know how to persist through time. Her birth carried no prophecy, no sign of upheaval, because she was not a god of change or rupture. She embodied presence before meaning, existence before motion. That presence was denied almost immediately. Cronus, fearing loss and succession, swallowed her without hesitation. She was erased before she could be seen, removed before identity could take shape. From this act, her nature was formed. Life could exist even when denied expression, and survival could precede recognition. Inside Cronus, time did not move. There was no sequence of moments, no growth, no decay, no future or past. Hestia existed in absolute suspension, where duration did not accumulate meaning. Fear and hope were impossible because both require change. In this stillness, she learned a fundamental truth of existence. Being does not require movement to remain real. Identity can persist without expression. Stability can exist even when nothing advances. Hestia did not resist her condition. Resistance would have required motion, and motion did not exist. She did not imagine escape or cultivate resentment. Instead, she held herself intact within the stillness. This endurance was not passive. It was active containment of self. Her essence condensed rather than dissolved, forming permanence instead of fracture. From this, she learned that strength can exist without action. When Zeus overthrew Cronus, the swallowed gods were released into the world. Hestia emerged last, carrying the longest memory of silence and suspension. The cosmos she entered was loud, divided, and restless, already shaped by struggle and victory. She did not rush to claim power or territory. She observed the instability beneath triumph. Freedom had brought motion, but not balance. The world moved, yet it did not rest. The Olympians divided existence into realms through declaration and force. Sky, sea, earth, and death became territories of command. Power was defined by distance from others and control over space. Hestia perceived what was missing. The cosmos had edges, but no center. Everything expanded outward, away from cohesion. Motion ruled all things, but nowhere did it gather. Hestia chose not the sky, nor the sea, nor the depths. She chose the middle, where forces pause before becoming destruction. This was not a throne, but a stabilizing point within existence. By choosing the center, she rejected domination entirely. She became balance rather than authority, containment rather than command. Power was redefined as the ability to hold. Fire emerged as the visible form of Hestia's essence. It was not lightning or wildfire, but a steady flame that burned without hunger. It did not advance, conquer, or consume. This fire transformed emptiness into shelter and cold into warmth. It allowed life to gather without fear. Continuity became visible and livable through flame. From Hestia's fire came the hearth, the first sacred structure of mortal life. It was built not to honor gods, but to preserve the living. Around it, people gathered to eat, rest, and endure. The hearth turned survival into community. Memory formed through shared presence. Hestia entered human life not as ruler, but as necessity, O flame. Hestia's flame did not function as a weapon or a signal of divine wrath. It established order through repetition and predictability, teaching mortals that continuity itself could be sacred. The hearth burned at the same place each day, turning space into home and time into rhythm. Through this constancy, fire became an unspoken law governing daily existence. Unlike the volatile flames of Hephaestus or the consuming fires of war, Hestia's fire defined boundaries without violence. It taught restraint, patience, and care. Civilization learned that not all power must expand outward. Some power must remain in place to sustain life. Hestia did not demand temples of stone or statues raised in her image. Her worship occurred quietly, through maintenance rather than spectacle. She was honored when fires were tended, meals shared, and spaces preserved. This silence was not neglect but intention. Her divinity manifested through absence of excess. By refusing grandeur, she ensured her presence everywhere. No home could exist without acknowledging her, even unknowingly. Hestia rejected marriage not from fear or aversion, but from understanding. To bind herself to another god would fracture her role as center. Her virginity symbolized autonomy, not purity. Through this choice, she remained indivisible. Her loyalty belonged not to lineage or desire, but to balance itself. In remaining unattached, she ensured that the hearth served all equally. When disputes arose among the Olympians, Hestia did not intervene through argument or decree. She remained present, absorbing tension rather than resolving it directly. Her presence stabilized conflict by preventing escalation. Even Zeus respected this quiet authority. The center could not be commanded. Without Hestia, Olympus itself would fragment under competing wills. The hearth preserved memory not through words, but through repetition. Each flame carried the echo of all previous fires. Through ritual acts, mortals connected past and present seamlessly. Hestia became the keeper of continuity. While other gods governed events, she governed endurance. History remained livable because something always stayed the same. Every city founded began with a flame taken from an older hearth. This act symbolized inheritance rather than conquest. Civilization expanded not by erasing origins, but by carrying them forward. Hestia thus governed colonization without violence. New beginnings were anchored to old stability. Expansion did not mean rupture, but extension of the center. When cities fell, Hestia's flame often died last. Even amid destruction, people returned instinctively to the hearth. In moments of collapse, it reminded them of what once held. This endurance transformed loss into survival. Hestia did not prevent disaster, but she softened its aftermath. Her presence allowed rebuilding to begin. Hestia's stories lack dramatic conflict because she existed beneath it. Her mythology unfolded quietly, in daily life rather than heroic narrative. This absence of spectacle ensured longevity. She became invisible not because she was weak, but because she was essential. The world forgot to mythologize her precisely because it depended on her. As Olympian power stretched across sky, sea, and underworld, Hestia's hearth remained the only point that did not move. It functioned as a cosmic axis, a place where motion slowed and existence gathered into coherence. The gods ruled domains, but Hestia governed orientation itself, allowing beings to know where they were in relation to one another. Without her center, all realms would drift into isolation. This axis was not vertical, like Zeus's lightning or Poseidon's depths. It was horizontal, spreading through homes, cities, and borders. The hearth aligned heaven and earth not through command, but through continuity. Existence remained intelligible because something always stayed. Daily ritual became Hestia's primary language. Lighting the fire, preparing food, and preserving space were acts of devotion without spectacle. Through repetition, chaos was prevented before it formed. Life became inhabitable rather than merely survivable. These routines transformed time itself. Days gained structure, seasons gained rhythm, and generations gained memory. Hestia ruled not moments of crisis, but the long stretch between them. Civilization endured because the ordinary was made sacred. Hestia formed an unspoken covenant between mortals and gods. As long as the hearth burned, the divine order acknowledged human life. Sacrifices began and ended with her flame, recognizing stability before petition. This covenant required no oath. It existed through mutual dependence. Gods needed the center as much as mortals did. Without Hestia, worship would scatter into noise without meaning. As belief in the Olympians weakened, temples fell and names faded. Storms no longer bore Zeus's authority, and seas no longer echoed Poseidon's will. Yet hearths continued to burn. Even as myths dissolved, Hestia endured the decline without loss. Her divinity was not tied to belief but to function. As long as people gathered for warmth and safety, she remained present. She outlived mythology by becoming necessity. In human psychology, Hestia manifested as the need for belonging and return. Wanderers longed for a center, and survivors sought reconstruction. The hearth became symbolic of inner stability. Through this, Hestia extended beyond physical fire. She governed emotional grounding and continuity of self. Identity persisted because something within remained constant, even when circumstances changed. Unlike other gods, Hestia never entered war, rivalry, or revenge. This absence of conflict was not avoidance, but transcendence. She existed beneath opposition itself. Her power lay in neutrality that stabilized extremes. Where Ares destroyed and Athena strategized, Hestia preserved. Conflict ended where her influence began, because destruction cannot persist where continuity is protected. Hestia did not depart the world when gods retreated into myth. She remained embedded in architecture, culture, and habit. Every home rebuilt her temple, unknowingly. Her eternity was not narrative, but structural. She existed wherever life required grounding. The world continued to orbit an unseen center. Hestia never ruled, never conquered, and never demanded. Yet without her, neither gods nor mortals could endure. She held existence together by remaining still while everything else moved. In this, she became the quiet foundation of reality. The world did not collapse because someone stayed. That someone was Hestia. Artemis was born into a divine order already fractured by fear, hierarchy, and inherited violence that shaped the Olympian world. As the daughter of Zeus and Leto, her existence was hunted before it was acknowledged or protected by divine law. Hera's jealousy transformed pregnancy into exile and survival into an act of resistance against absolute authority. From the very beginning, Artemis learned that distance, silence, and self-control are the strongest and most reliable forms of protection. Her birth occurred on Delos, a wandering island rejected by stable lands and denied sanctuary by the gods themselves. There was no safety, only endurance shaped by necessity, uncertainty, and isolation. Artemis emerged before Apollo, witnessing suffering and effort before comfort or celebration could exist. Instability became her first lesson about the true nature of existence. Almost immediately, Artemis assisted in the birth of her twin brother, standing at the threshold between pain and life. Blood, exhaustion, and responsibility surrounded her earliest actions and defined her awareness. She learned that strength does not require age or preparation, only resolve and clarity of purpose. From her first moments, boundaries and transitions became her eternal domain. When Zeus offered her gifts befitting an Olympian, Artemis refused symbols of marriage, luxury, and possession. She demanded eternal virginity, the bow, and absolute sovereignty over herself and her path. Identity, for her, was defined by refusal rather than accumulation or reward. Autonomy was elevated into sacred, irreversible law. Artemis rejected cities and the imposed order of civilization, claiming the untamed world as her realm. Forests, mountains, rivers, and wild creatures responded instinctively to her presence. Where human control expanded, her influence resisted, corrected, and limited it. Balance replaced domination wherever she walked. As goddess of the hunt, Artemis embodied discipline rather than brutality, cruelty, or indulgence. The hunt under her authority was governed by necessity, restraint, and respect for natural order. Each death served balance rather than desire, pride, or conquest. Precision replaced savagery, and purpose replaced excess. Animals did not flee Artemis as they fled mortals, because they recognized her as living law rather than predator. She protected the young, punished excess slaughter, and enforced equilibrium without emotion or hesitation. Survival under her gaze required restraint, awareness, and instinctive respect. Nature obeyed her because she understood its limits completely. Artemis surrounded herself with nymphs bound not by obligation, but by chosen independence. Their unity existed without hierarchy, domination, or imposed authority. Power flowed horizontally rather than vertically within their sacred circle. Freedom became collective strength rather than solitary isolation. Violation of Artemis's sanctity demanded immediate and irreversible consequence. She tolerated no intrusion, entitlement, or violation of boundaries. Intention mattered less than transgression itself under her law. To cross her limits was to lose identity, place, and form. The fate of Actaeon embodied her law with merciless clarity and precision. To see what was forbidden meant dissolution of the self rather than simple death. Transformation became punishment, erasing humanity from arrogance and entitlement. The hunter became living proof of violated balance. Despite her vow of eternal virginity, Artemis governed childbirth and female suffering. She presided over pain without surrendering autonomy or personal identity. Blood, endurance, and survival unfolded beneath her silent authority. Protection did not require participation, only vigilance and presence. Artemis ruled transitions rather than destinations or final outcomes. Young women invoked her at the collapse of childhood certainty and imposed expectation. She guarded identity during transformation without defining what followed. Passage itself mattered more than the result. Hubris was the transgression Artemis punished most relentlessly and without appeal. Comparison, challenge, or defiance of her order could not be tolerated. Judgment under her domain was immediate, precise, and final. Nature does not argue, negotiate, or forgive. Unlike gods driven by desire, ambition, or emotional excess, Artemis remained distant and incorruptible. Solitude preserved her clarity and sharpened perception. She neither loved mortals nor despised them. Detachment became the foundation of her justice. The moon emerged as Artemis's eternal mirror and instrument of awareness. Its cold light revealed movement, danger, and truth without warmth or illusion. Night transformed from fear into vigilance under her watch. Darkness became clarity rather than threat. Artemis existed as resistance to unchecked civilization and endless consumption. Where cities expanded without restraint, her presence imposed limits and consequence. Nature required defense against exploitation, disguised as progress. She became boundary made divine. To mortals, Artemis represented purity not as innocence, but as sovereignty of the self. She rejected imposed roles, expectations, and external desires. Identity under her protection remained unclaimed by others. Freedom demanded discipline and restraint. Mercy existed within Artemis's justice, but never without humility. Respect and awareness invited protection beneath her gaze. Disregard summoned destruction without warning or negotiation. Balance tolerated no sentimentality. Artemis did not require temples of stone to assert her divinity. Forest clearings, mountain passes, and untouched valleys became her sanctuaries. Silence served as her truest offering. Reverence manifested through restraint rather than praise. Women found strength in Artemis through endurance, refusal, and autonomy. She validated solitude as power rather than absence or weakness. Protection under her did not demand submission. Independence became sacred inheritance. Her myths functioned as warnings rather than celebrations or comfort. They condemned intrusion, entitlement, and imbalance with absolute clarity. Consequence followed violation without appeal or redemption. Memory preserved law across generations. Artemis embodies the necessity of limits within existence itself. Growth without boundary invites collapse and destruction. Life survives through restraint as much as expansion. Balance defines true freedom. She remains eternally youthful, untouched by decay, desire, or transformation. Permanence defines her presence within a changing world. She does not evolve, but enforces evolution in others. Stability emerges from constancy. As long as forests remain wild and the moon crosses the night sky, Artemis endures. She is not nurture, passion, nor rule. She is boundary given divine form. Through her, balance survives against excess. Long before Dionysus was born, his existence was already a disruption. He was conceived not as a god of sky, sea, or earth, but as a living contradiction, the child of Zeus, king of the gods, and Semele, a mortal woman. From the moment this union occurred, it challenged the rigid boundary between immortality and mortality. Dionysus was never meant to be safe for the cosmic order. He represented something unstable, the possibility that divinity could bleed into human fragility. Hera sensed this danger immediately. She did not fear the child's strength, but his meaning. Dionysus would be proof that the gods could lose control, that their authority was not absolute. Unable to strike Zeus directly, Hera turned her attention to Semele. Through deception and planted doubt, she guided the mortal woman toward a fatal request to see Zeus in his true divine form, unfiltered by mercy. When Zeus revealed himself as lightning and fire, Semele's mortal body was destroyed instantly. The world did not mourn her. It merely corrected the imbalance. Yet within the flames, the unborn child survived. Zeus tore Dionysus from the fire and sewed him into his own thigh, transforming himself into a second womb. Thus Dionysus became twice born, once of a mortal, once of a god. And from the beginning, he belonged fully to neither realm. When Dionysus was born for the second time, there was no celebration. His arrival was marked by urgency and fear. Hera's wrath had not faded, and the infant god had to be concealed immediately. He was carried away from Olympus and entrusted to nymphs, spirits of mountains and forests, beings who lived beyond the direct reach of divine politics. His childhood unfolded far from palaces and temples. He was raised in caves, among vines and wild animals, surrounded by untamed nature. Wherever he grew, vegetation flourished unnaturally. Vines twisted faster, fruits ripened heavier, and animals lost their fear. Even as a child, Dionysus did not bring order. He brought intensity. In some traditions, Hera eventually found him and struck him with madness. Dionysus lost his sense of self and wandered aimlessly across the world. This was not a punishment alone, but an initiation. Before becoming the god who ruled ecstasy, Dionysus had to experience chaos from within. His mind shattered not to destroy him, but to expand him. Dionysus traveled far beyond Greece. His journeys carried him through Thrace, Asia Minor, Syria, and as far as India. These were not conquests of land, but transformations of culture. Wherever Dionysus arrived, he introduced the vine, the art of winemaking, and rituals that dissolved social hierarchy. Kings and servants drank together, dancers lost their names, and identity became fluid. Not all welcomed him. Rulers who rejected his rites often met violent ends, driven mad, torn apart, or stripped of authority. Dionysus did not punish through calculated justice. His retribution was the eruption of suppressed truth. Those who denied him denied a part of human nature, and that denial turned inward, consuming them. Over time, Dionysus learned to master his own chaos. What had once been uncontrolled frenzy evolved into ritual. Music, dance, masks, and wine became structured gateways into altered states. Dionysus transformed madness into a sacred experience, one that could heal rather than destroy when approached with reverence. Among the darkest myths surrounding Dionysus is his death at the hands of the Titans. Lured by toys and mirrors, the young god was attacked, torn apart, and devoured. This act was not merely murder. It was an attempt to annihilate the principle of transformation itself. Dionysus represented instability, and the Titans sought to erase it. Yet even this did not end him. His heart was saved, and from it, he was reborn once more. In this rebirth, Dionysus became a god who had known death not as a ruler, but as a victim. Unlike Hades, who governed the dead, Dionysus experienced death from the inside and returned. This experience reshaped his essence. Dionysus became the god of resurrection, renewal, and eternal return. His cult would forever be tied to cycles, of seasons, of life and decay, of sanity and madness. Through him, death was no longer final. It was transitional. From the rituals of Dionysus emerged theater. Masks became sacred objects, allowing individuals to shed their identities and inhabit others. On stage, humans confronted fear, guilt, rage, and death. Not to escape reality, but to endure it. Dionysus was not the god of illusion, but of revelation. Theater stripped away pretense. Through tragedy, audiences experienced suffering without destruction, chaos without collapse. This was Dionysian ecstasy refined by structure. Theater became civilization's way of safely accessing Dionysus. What had once been wild frenzy was now framed, timed, and contained. Yet the essence remained unchanged. Transformation through emotional extremity. Though commonly known as the god of wine, Dionysus was never merely a patron of intoxication. Wine was a tool, not the destination. It loosened boundaries, but it did not define the journey. Dionysus governed liminal states, moments when identity dissolves and new forms emerge. Creativity, prophecy, madness, and liberation all belong to his domain. These states were dangerous, which is why his worship always required ritual discipline. He was the god of thresholds between sanity and insanity, human and divine, life and death. No other Olympian ruled these borders. Dionysus alone inhabited the unstable space where transformation occurred. For a long time, Dionysus was an outsider among the gods. His nature was too fluid, his power too unpredictable. Olympus favored hierarchy and control, while Dionysus represented surrender and release. Eventually, the gods recognized a truth. Without Dionysus, order becomes rigid and lifeless. He was granted a place among the Olympians not because he conformed, but because balance required him. Dionysus became the necessary counterpart to Apollo. Where Apollo provided structure, Dionysus supplied energy. Where Apollo shaped form, Dionysus fueled creation. Together, they held civilization between reason and passion. The worship of Dionysus was unlike any other. He was not approached with quiet reverence, but with participation. His festivals dissolved gender roles, social ranks, and personal identity. To worship Dionysus was to experience him. His cult gave voice to the marginalized, women, slaves, foreigners. Through Dionysus, they reclaimed agency, movement, and presence. This made him dangerous to authority, yet essential to humanity. Dionysus is not the god of escape from reality. He is the god of confronting it without armor. As long as humans seek freedom from internal restraint, rebirth through chaos, and truth beyond reason, Dionysus endures. Hephaestus was not born amid songs and triumph, but in the shadow of disappointment. His birth did not bring joy to Hera, the goddess who sought perfection. The infant was lame and weak in appearance, and in the eyes of Olympus, this was a stain on divine greatness. Unwilling to see a reminder of imperfection, Hera cast her son from the heavens. His fall lasted a long time, through the clouds, the wind, and the silence that separates the gods from the world. At that moment, Hephaestus's body broke, but his spirit was tempered like metal and fire. Thus began the story of a god whose strength was born not from lightning but from pain. Hephaestus fell into the sea and was rescued by sea nymphs, who sheltered him on the island of Lemnos. There, far from Olympus, he experienced loneliness and silence. His body never fully healed, but his hands became strong and his mind sharp. Among the caves and rocks, he lit a fire for the first time, not as an element, but as a tool. The flames obeyed him, changing shape, becoming an extension of his will. It was here that he learned to transform pain into creation. Exile became his school, and loneliness became the anvil on which the godsmith was forged. Deep within the caves, Hephaestus created his first forge. Stone became the floor, lava became light, and the hammer became the voice of his heart. Each blow to the red-hot metal was an attempt to prove to the world that strength does not always have a perfect form. His creations did not simply serve, they lived. Under his hands, metal became weapons, jewelry, protection, and symbols of power. He forged the first mechanical creatures that moved on their own, as if they had souls. Thus, Hephaestus became the only god who did not create with words or lightning, but with labor. The fame of Hephaestus's skill reached even Olympus. The gods needed the one they had once rejected. His return was not a triumph. It was a recognition of necessity. Hephaestus appeared among the gods not as a supplicant, but as an equal. His limp no longer seemed like a weakness, for everyone saw in his hands a power capable of changing the course of events. Olympus accepted him back, but he no longer belonged there completely. Hephaestus remained an outsider, observing and creating without seeking approval. It was Hephaestus who created Zeus's lightning bolts, Poseidon's trident, Athena's shield, and the armor of heroes. His creations determined victories and defeats, even if his name was rarely mentioned alongside them. He forged not only metal, but also destinies. Every sword, every piece of armor carried a part of his pain and perseverance. His creations were perfect not because they were beautiful, but because they were true. Legends were born in the fire of his forge. Despite his talent, Hephaestus found no peace in his heart. His marriage to Aphrodite became a symbol of the inequality between beauty and labor. Love was as difficult for him as the journey back to Olympus. He experienced betrayal and bitterness, but did not allow them to destroy him. Instead of revenge, he chose creativity. Instead of anger, he chose purifying fire. His inner conflict made him the most human of the gods, one who knows the price of loneliness. Hephaestus's forges were located not only on Olympus, but also beneath volcanoes, where the earth breathes fire. People believed that earthquakes and eruptions were echoes of his work. He became the god of underground flames, craftsmen, and those who work with their hands. Mortals saw him not as a distant deity, but as a patron who understood the fatigue and strain of labor. Hephaestus became a bridge between gods and humans, because his power was understood by both. Hephaestus remained a symbol of the fact that greatness does not always come from perfection. His lameness became a sign of endurance and fire, not a destructive force, but the beginning of creation. He did not seek worship, only the opportunity to create. And therein lay his true power. When the world changes, when a new weapon or a new tool is born, there is always an echo of his hammer. For where there is fire, labor, and will, there is Hephaestus, the god who turned pain into strength. Hermes was born in a cave on the slopes of Mount Olympus, when the morning sun was just beginning to touch the clouds. His mother, Maia, belonged to those goddesses who lived away from Olympus, amid silence and stars, where even the wind whispers cautiously. However, the child she brought into the world was not at all like those who seek peace. From the very first moments of his life, Hermes radiated cunning and a thirst for movement. His eyes shone with an inquisitive light, and his hands reached uncontrollably for everything new. He was made for the road, for moving between places that others didn't even dare to dream of. In the dawn air, he took his first step, his first breath, and that moment determined his entire future. He would become the one who connects heaven and earth, gods and humans, life and death. Even as a child, Hermes discovered an art that would accompany him for all eternity. He created a lyre from a turtle shell and taut sinewy strings, and when he ran his finger across them, the world around him froze in amazement. The melody that sounded was both playful and profound, like life itself. It conveyed movement, lightness, and freedom, the traits that defined his essence. This music would later become a symbol of wisdom, creativity, and harmony, accessible only to those who are not afraid to go beyond the familiar. The creation of the lyre was not just child's play. It was the first sign that Hermes brought something more to the world than cunning and theft. He brought people art that makes hearts move, just as travelers' feet move along the roads of the world. Hermes was not only the god of the road, he became the patron of everything born of cunning, intelligence, and dexterity. It was he who invented winged shoes, which allowed him to cross the world in a matter of moments. He created simple tools that people used in their daily lives and gave mortals knowledge that could change their destiny. For the gods, he was a messenger who carried out Zeus's most dangerous assignments. He was entrusted with secrets because he knew how to keep them as skillfully as others hide treasures. Thanks to his quick wits, he could avoid traps, uncover deceit, and find a way out where everyone else saw only a dead end. The world was fascinated by his inventions. Even those who treated Hermes with suspicion acknowledged that he brought inexhaustible movement to the universe. Hermes became the voice of the gods among men. He had the power to overcome any boundaries, sky, earth, sea, and even those realms where no other immortal had ever set foot. He brought prophecies to kings, Zeus's orders to rulers, and advice to heroes, on which the success of great deeds depended. People never knew when he would appear, sometimes as a young man in a traveler's cloak, sometimes as a traveler seeking shelter, and sometimes as a shadow that only touched their thoughts. His elusiveness made him the most dangerous of the gods. He saw what others wanted to hide. But his mission was higher. He provided a link between the realms, maintaining a balance between the will of the gods and the fates of mortals. Among all his roles, Hermes had one that mortals feared. He was a psychopomp, a guide for souls to the realm of Hades. He approached the dead quietly without fear or undue solemnity. His steps were light, like a breath of wind, and his gaze was full of calm, which helped souls leave their earthly burdens behind. Hermes did not judge or punish them. His task was to guide them safely through the darkness where a new path begins. He was the light at the end of the road, the only god who could freely enter and leave the realm of the dead. He was called a traveler in the world of shadows, and this role made him a figure who was closer to people than any other Olympian. Hermes had a dual nature. He was both a blessing and a threat. He was worshipped by travelers and merchants, but feared by thieves and liars, because even they knew that he was more cunning than all of them put together. He did not distinguish between good and evil in the usual human sense. For Hermes, movement itself was important. The movement of thought, the movement of action, the movement of fate. Therefore, he could simultaneously help heroes and tempt them with mistakes in order to test their steadfastness. He was called the god of crossroads, places where everyone must choose a path. And every choice made under his gaze became a test of cunning, intelligence, and the ability to act faster than fate. In myths, Hermes appears alongside the greatest heroes. He gives Perseus a mirrored shield that protects him from Medusa's gaze. He guides Odysseus through the darkness of Circe's spells. He helps Hercules when he descends into Hades. Hermes never stands at the center of events. His shadow is always on the edge of the frame, but without his intervention, many stories simply would not have happened. He does not seek fame and does not compete for greatness. This is his principle and his strength. The heroes who met him sometimes did not understand that a god was standing next to them. But each of them felt that when Hermes touched their fate, the path ahead became more dangerous, but also more righteous. Hermes remains one of the most vibrant gods in the Greek pantheon. He is the embodiment of movement, speed, change, and freedom. Wherever the wind blows, wherever paths diverge, wherever someone makes a choice or sets off on a journey, his presence is felt. He is a god without a throne, because a throne means rest. His kingdom is every path, every boundary, every moment when a person decides to change their life. And although he is not the most powerful of the gods, it is Hermes who moves the world forward. For without movement, there are no stories. Without a road, there is no destiny. And without Hermes, the world would stop, like a ship that suddenly lost the wind in its sails. Ares came into the world as the embodiment of that side of war that even the gods fear. He did not carry within him cold strategy or restrained wisdom. His essence was the passion of battle, the chaos of blows, and the unbridled rush of blood. Zeus looked at his son with anxiety and Hera with pride, for Ares embodied the primal force of confrontation. From childhood, he knew no peace. His footsteps sounded like the clang of shields, and his breath was like the hot wind before a storm. Where other gods built cities or established laws, Ares saw only future battlefields. His heart beat to the rhythm of a war that had not yet begun. Ares was not the god of victory. He was the god of battle itself. He did not care who triumphed, for he lived in every clash, in every broken spear. Unlike Athena, who embodied order and strategy, Ares went where chaos reigned. His companions were Phobos and Deimos, fear and terror, who who marched ahead of the army, breaking the spirit of the warriors before the first blow was struck. Blood on the ground, the cries of the wounded, dust rising from thousands of feet. This was where Ares felt at home. He did not judge or weigh things up. For him, war was a force of nature, as relentless as a storm or a fire. Despite his power, Ares was not loved by either the gods or humans. The Olympians viewed him with suspicion because his presence threatened the balance. He did not build or create, he destroyed. People prayed to him out of fear, not devotion. His altars stood on the outskirts of cities, closer to battlefields than to homes. He was necessary but unwanted, inevitable but not revered. Ares carried loneliness within him, for no one wanted to see him as anything more than a bloody symbol of war. The only one who did not turn away from Ares was Aphrodite. Her beauty and tenderness seemed to be the complete opposite of his fury. But it was this difference that drew them to each other. Their connection was explosive, like life itself. Passion born between blood and silk. In Aphrodite's presence, Ares felt something more than anger. An echo of that part of his soul that war could not destroy. But even love could not free him from his nature. He returned to the battlefield, leaving behind devastation and memories that could not stop him. Ares suffered defeat more than once. He was wounded by mortals supported by the gods, and he was subdued by those he considered weaker than himself. Athena cast him from the battlefield, reminding him that blind rage is no match for reason. Once, he was even imprisoned by giants, locked in a bronze vessel. And there, in the darkness, the god of war learned helplessness. Time passed slowly, and every moment was an insult to his essence. These defeats did not break him, but they left scars that made Ares even more fierce, even more lonely. When wars broke out between cities, Ares was always there. His footsteps brought chaos to Troy, to Thebes, to any place where people took up arms against each other. He incited, pushed, and fanned the spark into a blaze. It did not matter to him who was right. He lived in the very process of destruction. But sometimes even Ares paused, looking at the fields covered with bodies. In those rare moments, the silence after the battle reminded him of the price of what he was. Over time, Ares began to see his own reflection in mortals. People did not need him to wage war. War lived within them. His wrath was merely an amplification of what already existed in human hearts. Fear, greed, and the desire to dominate. This realization did not bring him peace, but it did give him bitter wisdom. Ares understood that he was not the cause of war, but its mirror, dark, cruel, but honest. Ares has no temples where silence reigns. His shrines are places where the earth trembles from blows, where the air is thick with dust and sweat. He lives in the cries of warriors, in the clash of steel, in the hearts of those who raise their swords. He does not seek love or forgiveness. His destiny is to be where the world tears itself apart. And as long as war exists, as long as people choose force over peace, Ares will not disappear. He will remain the eternal cry of the battlefield, a god who is feared, but without whom it is impossible to understand the true price of peace. Apollo's story begins not in triumph, but in rejection. His mother, Leto, carried divine life through a world ruled by fear. Hera's jealousy poisoned every land before her. Mountains denied shelter. Cities closed their gates. Rivers turned silent, unwilling to witness what was forbidden. Leto wandered endlessly, not pursued by armies but by denial itself. The world did not dare to accept her. To do so meant inviting divine punishment. At last, she reached Delos, a floating island with no roots, no loyalty, no future. It was unstable, barren, and forgotten. And precisely because it belonged nowhere, it was free to offer refuge. There, under an unforgiving sky, Apollo was born. No storm marked his arrival. No thunder announced him. Instead, something subtler occurred. Light became deliberate. Shadows withdrew, not in fear, but in obedience. The world did not change. It aligned. Apollo's birth was not an eruption of power, but the emergence of meaning. From the beginning, he was different. Other gods arrived as forces. Apollo arrived as a principle. Apollo did not experience childhood as mortals do. There was no ignorance to protect, no innocence to preserve. Awareness came first. Within days, his body matured. Within moments, his mind awakened fully. He perceived balance instinctively, not as morality, but as structure. He observed the aftermath of the Titanomachy, a world still scarred, where ancient horrors lingered in forgotten places and chaos survived where order had not yet reached. Apollo did not respond with fear or rage. He responded with assessment. The bow came into his hands not as a weapon of anger, but as a tool of precision. The lyre followed, not for pleasure, but for harmony. These two instruments defined him. One corrected what threatened balance. The other shaped what needed refinement. Apollo did not seek dominion. He sought coherence. Before Apollo, prophecy existed, but it belonged to terror. At Delphi, the serpent python ruled knowledge through fear. The future was known, but only through poison and intimidation. This was not wisdom, it was dominance. Apollo confronted Python not as a challenger seeking glory, but as an inevitable correction. His arrows carried more than force, they carried transition. With each strike, an era ended. When Python fell, the earth itself released a long-held breath. Apollo did not celebrate. He purified the land. From Delphi arose a new center of prophecy, one governed by interpretation, reflection, and responsibility. Knowledge would no longer enslave, it would guide. This was Apollo's first great act, the replacement of primordial terror with rational order. Apollo's influence extended beyond destruction. He understood that chaos did not vanish through elimination alone. It required structure. He gathered the muses and imposed discipline upon inspiration. Under Apollo, music learned harmony, poetry learned proportion. Art ceased to be excess and became communication. Emotion was not suppressed, it was shaped. Apollo believed that beauty without measure leads to madness, and creativity without form dissolves into noise. He became the unseen architect of culture. Every melody that calms rather than incites, every verse that elevates rather than overwhelms, carries his signature. In this way, Apollo civilized not only gods, but humanity itself. Despite his clarity, Apollo was not untouched by desire. His radiance attracted devotion, but rarely fulfillment. Mortals he loved faded with time. Nymphs fled or transformed, unable to endure divine intensity. Each loss carved restraint into him. Apollo learned that light, when imposed, becomes fire. He did not grow cruel. He grew distant. Through love, Apollo learned his most painful lesson. Even perfection cannot be possessed. From that moment, he chose governance over attachment, observation over pursuit. His restraint was not coldness, it was wisdom shaped by loss. Apollo governed life at its most fragile edge. His arrows could bring plague, yet his knowledge revealed healing. This duality was not contradiction. It was balance. Through Asclepius, medicine emerged as sacred science. Healing became understanding, not desperation. Suffering was not always punishment. Often it was imbalance demanding correction. Apollo taught that mortality was not failure, it was structure. Life and death were not enemies. They were stages governed by order. Apollo never dictated fate. His oracles revealed paths, not conclusions. Their riddles were not deception. They were discipline. Truth under Apollo required patience and humility. Those who misunderstood prophecy blamed the god, but the fault lay in their haste. The future was not fixed. It was shaped by choice. Apollo governed destiny as a guide, not a tyrant. Over time, Apollo became inseparable from the sun, not merely as its bearer, but as its meaning. The sun reveals without judgment. It illuminates without distortion. Apollo embodies clarity, balance, healing, art, and foresight. He is not the brightest flame, but the steadiest. Where chaos seeks dominance, Apollo offers structure. Where fear demands control, Apollo offers understanding. As long as humanity seeks reason over instinct, harmony over excess, and truth over terror, Apollo endures. After the fall of the Titans, the world needed order. The brothers cast lots, and fate determined their kingdoms. Zeus received the sky, Poseidon received the sea, and Hades received the underworld. This choice was not a punishment. Hades did not resist. He understood that someone had to take on the burden that others turned away from. The underworld was not only a place of death, it was a boundary without which life would lose its meaning. Hades descended into the depths without looking back. He accepted his kingdom as one accepts the inevitable, without regret, without fear, with full responsibility. The underworld did not arise on its own. Hades shaped it gradually, like an architect who builds not for beauty but for eternity. He separated Erebus from the asphodel fields, defined the boundaries of Tartarus, and paved the way for rivers that carried memory and oblivion. He did not torture souls. He distributed them. Each deceased person received a place according to the life they had lived. The judgment was not emotional. It was fair. Hades became the first god who did not seek worship. He was not interested in the love of mortals. Balance was important to him. After the fall of the Titans, the world needed order. The brothers cast lots, and fate determined their kingdoms. Zeus received the sky, Poseidon received the sea, and Hades received the underworld. This choice was not a punishment. Hades did not resist. He understood that someone had to take on the burden that others turned away from. The underworld was not only a place of death, it was a boundary without which life would lose its meaning. Hades descended into the depths without looking back. He accepted his kingdom as one accepts the inevitable, without regret, without fear, with full responsibility. The underworld did not arise on its own. Hades shaped it gradually, like an architect who builds not for beauty but for eternity. He separated Erebus from the asphodel fields, defined the boundaries of Tartarus, and paved the way for rivers that carried memory and oblivion. He did not torture souls. He distributed them. Each deceased person received a place according to the life they had lived. The judgment was not emotional. It was fair. Hades became the first god who did not seek worship. He was not interested in the love of mortals. Balance was important to him. Unlike Olympus, the kingdom of Hades knew no holidays. His throne was simple, devoid of luxury. He did not sit above death, he sat beside it. No one prayed to him for wealth or victory. His name was whispered but with respect. He was a god who never betrayed his duties. Even other gods did not interfere in his domain unnecessarily. For Hades did not forgive violations of boundaries. When Persephone appeared in his kingdom, the underworld changed. For the first time, not only life but also time appeared in Hades' domain. Her presence did not make him weaker. It made him more complete. Hades did not possess her by force. Their union became a covenant between life and death. When Persephone returned to Earth, the world blossomed. When she descended back down, the Earth froze. Thus, Hades became part of the cycle, not its end. Epochs passed. People changed gods, names, beliefs, but Hades remained. He did not persecute, punish without reason, or gloat. He was the final stop on the journey, not the enemy of life, but its completion. Where everything else was falling apart, he kept order. Hades is not a god of fear. He is a god of boundaries. And as long as life exists, there will be a need for someone who will accept its end without hatred, without joy, with absolute justice. So he sits in the silence of his kingdom, first among those who never sought to be first. Poseidon was one of 3 brothers who divided the world among themselves after the fall of the Titans. He was given the sea, not as a gift, but as an element that obeyed no will, not even that of the gods. He recognized himself in the waves of the ocean, changeable, powerful, unpredictable. His power was not like Zeus's lightning or Hades' dark authority. It flowed continuously, like the ebb and flow of the tide, destroying the shores and giving birth to life at the same time. Where Poseidon's foot stepped, the earth shook and the sea rose, as if acknowledging its ruler. Poseidon's symbol was the trident, not just a weapon, but the key to the very structure of the world. One blow could split rocks, another could raise a new island from the depths of the sea. People believed that earthquakes were his wrath, and a calm sea was a sign of his temporary mercy. Poseidon was the god not only of water, but also of the earth beneath it. He was called the Shaker because he controlled the forces hidden from human eyes. He did not need an army. Nature itself was his army. The abyss obeyed Poseidon. Sea monsters, Nereids, Tritons, and creatures whose names mortals dared not utter acknowledged his power. The horse created by Poseidon became a symbol of unbridled energy, rushing forward like a wave breaking on the shore. His palace in the depths of the ocean sparkled with corals and pearls, but it was cold and lonely. There, amid the silence, Poseidon looked down on the world from above, knowing that he was capable of destroying everything, but could not stop his own nature. Poseidon often got into conflicts with gods, heroes, and entire cities. He fought with Athens for control of Attica and lost not by force, but by wisdom. This defeat left him with bitterness that only grew over the years. His wrath was terrible. Storms, tempests, and shipwrecks became punishment for disrespect. But this wrath was rarely blind. It was born of a sense of injustice and neglected honor. Poseidon could not tolerate it when mortals forgot to whom they owed their passage across the seas. His most famous revenge was his long and merciless feud with Odysseus. The blinding of the Cyclops Polyphemus was a challenge to the god himself. Poseidon did not kill the hero instantly. He chose another punishment. He prolonged the journey home for years, filling it with storms, losses, and despair. Each wave was a reminder. The sea remembers insults. At the same time, this struggle showed another side of Poseidon. He recognized the endurance and intelligence of those who were able to withstand the elements. Poseidon was not only a destroyer. He gave sailors favorable winds, fishermen generous catches, and cities prosperity if they honored him. His blessings were as powerful as his wrath. In this duality, he was closest to human nature, capable of both loving and destroying, protecting and punishing. He was revered with fear, but also with hope, for without the sea, the world would be dead. Poseidon has no end and no beginning, just like the sea itself. He is present in every wave, every storm, every quiet rustle of water near the shore. Even when the gods are silent, the sea speaks for him. It reminds mortals of a force that cannot be conquered, but can be respected. And as long as ships sail the open sea, as long as people gaze at the horizon with hope and fear, Poseidon will remain the ruler of the abyss, a god before whom even those who do not believe in gods bow down.